Yeah, I think that's important too. Your point about kind of focusing on the product. Like you wouldn't want to subscribe to a Netflix competitor that their whole thing was all about which data servers they used in which regions to maximize you want the place with good content, right? So it's important that good technology is built on other good technology, but we're not here to innovate on L1s. We're here to build a functioning protocol, and we're not L1 maxis or L2 maxis, we're DIMO maxis, right?
Rob, thank you so much for joining me, the co-founder of DIMO. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. We're running it back. I think we had some audio issues on the first one, so really appreciate you joining me again today, and looking forward to diving into DIMO as we did last time. I think what I'm personally excited about is getting away from really just infrastructure projects. I think there's a lot of them within crypto. Scaling obviously has been a big important issue for the entire industry. But I think now we're kind of at the point where we can build interesting things. And to me, DIMO is up there in terms of what you guys are doing, unique approaches, something differentiated. So really happy to have you on and dive into the specifics, even your own journey of ultimately how this all came to be.
Yeah, and I had the flu last time too, so this is saving everybody my flu voice. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, maybe just to kick it off, can you tell us a little bit, a quick background on yourself, how you ultimately came into the crypto space, and how you ended up as a co-founder of DIMO?
Yeah, so just before DIMO, I was at Consensus. So I got to see a lot of really cool crypto projects, chapters of kind of every cycle is kind of marked differently. When I first got in, it was 2017, kind of the ICO era. Saw a lot of projects doing that. Then there was DeFi summer. When CryptoKitties happened, I think the entire office stopped what they were doing for an entire day or two and just was breeding CryptoKitties. So got to see a bunch of different chapters there. Prior to Consensus, I was at Vroom selling used cars online. I never thought I would combine cars with crypto, but it's really been pretty excellent combination of experiences. And before that, the thing that got me into crypto in the first place, I was at a company called the Downtown Project. It was an offshoot of Zappos.com. CEO Tony Hsieh, he since passed away. He's a really great guy. He was trying to experiment with decentralized organizational structures. He was implementing something called Holacracy, which, there's no managers. It was meant to be a big, scalable, decentralized org. And we put a lot of effort into really implementing that. Super cool idea, but I think there's just some shortcomings with Holacracy. So, but I still thought there's something to decentralized organizations. And when I read the Ethereum white paper, when I saw some of the use cases, just like on the website, identity DAOs, that kind of thing, it's like this is kind of the missing piece for a whole bunch of things. Also, kind of having a finance background too, just kind of seeing the inefficiency behind the scenes in all of our systems for HR, finance, supply chain, whatever, and knowing how much that could impact it. So I kind of decided at that point, all right, I'm going to dedicate my career to blockchain. Started going to meetups. That's where I met the folks from Consensus, and the rest has kind of been history.
That's a super interesting journey. I always find it interesting because crypto originally was kind of like super niche. It started with like the Bitcoin crowd, kind of like fuck the government, so to speak, the anarchists, and trying to recreate money. And then it expanded with like the Turing completeness of Ethereum and smart contracts. And then you were like, all right, I can build unique, interesting applications. And it is expanded upon that with decentralized autonomous organizations, different DAO structures, and DeFi, NFTs, the culture. Everybody has their own unique angle. And I think it's interesting just kind of you approach it slightly from kind of Tony Hsieh. And I think there's been books written about him, his leadership style, and the interesting aspects there. And then ultimately that pushing you to be like, what is this Ethereum thing, and joining Consensus. How was that early time at Consensus? Ethereum still one the most popular smart contract platform today. But really being there at the early times, how was that kind of internally?
It was really interesting. Consensus was more, well, when I first started interviewing, like 250 employees. I joined several months later. There were 450. A couple months after that, there were like 1,500. It was like, and then ETH at $85, and there was a layoffs, right? So it was a quite an explosive time there. Consensus was characterized at the beginning when I was there mainly by a large constellation of spokes, they call them, more consumer-facing crypto applications. And then there was also Infura and Pegasus and MetaMask. And it you kind of got to see how difficult it was to build these more consumer use cases back when wallets were so much worse, and when the developer tools were so much worse, and it's not like these teams were great. It just takes some time to build this infrastructure, right? So it gave me a real appreciation, and it's part of why I've been more EVM biased. Is the maturity of the kind of invisible maturity of the underlying tools and complementary infrastructure that you get as a network goes further. I will say, Solana's moved so much faster than I expected in its maturation there. But I got to see that. Obviously, well, the MetaMask Infura side of Consensus did incredibly well. And the modern Consensus software company is mainly more infrastructure stack. The things that were kind of more consumer really struggled to get adoption, and a lot of those are no longer operating. I would kind of describe working at Consensus almost like having a fellowship or like a post-grad degree in working in blockchain. Joe's an incredibly generous guy, Joe Lubin, and a lot of people were just kind of there exploring, experimenting, given a lot of individual freedom and latitude to kind of learn about blockchain and the industry and kind of pursue whatever interested them. And so I was super grateful for that. Got to see a lot of different projects, different ways of doing things. A lot of those projects have influenced DIMO considerably. Would do it again.
I guess like internally at the time, you kind of went through the boom or joined in the ladder of the boom and then went through the bus of kind of the historical ups and downs. How has that either like changed your view on the space or how you approach things as a founder now today with DIMO, and just preparing for what it feels like now? I feel like we're strictly in the beginnings of the bull market or somewhere a couple innings in now versus say even 6 months ago, a year ago, being in the depths of the bear and things going from despair to euphoria, and kind of managing the team there as well.
Yeah, the first few cycles were a lot. The first time you see ETH go from, was it $1,500 to $85, you go, okay, maybe it is dead. That seems extreme. And then it happens several more times. Like, all right, this is just kind of the inevitable way it's going to happen. And when FTX imploded, it's like, okay, well, we're going to have a year or two of $100 ETH again, or whatever it ends up getting down to. I was actually surprised it bottomed out where it did. I thought it would go further down. But there will be cycles. Another Joe Lubin quote, before I even joined, I think it was in the summer I was interviewing, he was giving an interview. And this is kind of before the cycles really just kind of became inevitable and kept going, was where they asked about prices and all that. And he said, yeah, we're in a period with a lot of excitement and capital coming in, and then it will contract, and then it will go back up again. Then it'll contract. And every time more capital will come into the space, the technology will improve, more developers will come into the space, and we'll build more and more of a foundation. This was like in 2017, I think. And it's wound up being totally true. I would say the biggest difference as a builder is in a bear market, you're on a smaller stage, but it's a less crowded stage. In a bull market, everyone's interested in crypto, but now you're competing for air with 30 different dog coins and a lot of other, kind of things that are going on, and people are really interested in the very short-term speculative stuff. I think that I saw with I forget which bear market it was, but out of that came like Synthetics and Gitcoin and a bunch of other projects where it's like, wow, there's a lot of substance to these coming into a bull market. And they had a lot of momentum and very solid. It kind of helped to focus them and help them to identify some product market fit and so on. And so I always think of the bear market as an opportunity to really focus on adding the undeniable value. It's a terrible time to launch a dog coin, but it's a great time to be building a project with substance.
So let's dive into that, a project of substance. To me, that's where I'm really excited about the space today, is that we built a lot of infrastructure, but now it is actually possible to build more interesting applications because you expand past Ethereum's historically 12 to 15 transactions per second. Fees are getting cheaper on various layer twos and the high throughput blockchains. And I think DIMO is really focused on the product side, which to me is very refreshing and trying to do something very unique in the space. Can you talk about just the journey of DIMO, kind of from idea to product to now company, and where you guys are at today?
Yeah, I think that's important too, your point about kind of focusing on the product. Like, you wouldn't want to subscribe to a Netflix competitor that their whole thing was all about which data servers they used in which regions to maximize you want the place with good content, right? So it's important that good technology is built on other good technology, but we're not here to innovate on L1s. We're here to build a functioning protocol, and we're not L1 maxis or L2 maxis, we're DIMO maxis, right? We're trying to make sure that the DIMO protocol functions well, wherever that may be. So the other thing that I think is really interesting about DIMO too is it started as a problem in mobility where blockchain happened to be the answer, rather than people trying to do something with blockchain, searching for a problem. Not every project is like that, but a lot of them are. And the original version of DIMO that Andy was working on in Palo Alto was you would get out of your vehicle at a parking garage, and the sensors in the garage is 3D mapped by some sophisticated camera. There's sensors in the garage all over the place that are kind of navigating or monitoring traffic and objects and whatever. And they're talking to the vehicle to help it park itself and pay for itself. So you would get out of a Ford vehicle, the garage would talk to it, it would pull the Ford in, pull out a BMW to make room for the Ford, kind of just orchestrate all this self-driving. And if you know anything about mobility, you know just how impossible that is to imagine all of these automakers being on a shared like permissioning and communications platform for steer-by-wire type applications like that. There was no digital infrastructure for it. So that was the first version of it. And the second version, the second thing that they were doing, Ev and Andy were working on, was trying to get electric vehicle battery data. And they just couldn't get it. And they were going to pay people in cash to install one of these devices. If you're listening, I'm just holding up a thing about the size of a calculator that you plug into your OBD port in your car. And that way they could stream electric vehicle performance data to see how is the range doing, what are people doing, the charging habits, how are people using electric vehicles. And they were going to pay people cash. They were healing them at the same time. Like, what if it's kind of like that commercial where the peanut butter truck crashes into the chocolate truck and they make Reese's cups. It's like, what if we combine this with this? That's when I got involved. And what made me really excited about it too was not just the chance to use the token to solve the cold start problem, but this type of network would not be interesting to automakers. It wouldn't be viable without the kind of blockchain distributed ledger aspect of it and the neutrality that you can get when you build a system this way.
So maybe if we take a quick step back, and thank you for all that context, what is like the broader vision of DIMO? What is the problem that you guys are trying to solve, and how do you guys go about doing that?
Yeah, so cars are incredibly sophisticated hardware. Like the gas engine has more or less been perfected on vehicles. And they're pretty sophisticated battery. They're at the forefront of battery technology, forefront of autonomous vehicle technology. But when it comes to smart digital internet connected technology, they're still really far behind. You could think of, I use the analogy all the time. You think about the progression from landlines to flip phones to Blackberries to iPhones. If you have like a 2002 Ford Focus, that's like a landline. The most smart thing about it is if you're holding the remote, you can unlock it from 5 feet away. There's no real smart features to it. A more modern Ford vehicle with Ford Pass, or Honda's connected vehicle solution, or my BMW, or whatever you have. That's like a flip phone. There's some remote digital, you can unlock your car from another town over or something like that if somebody's standing by it, but you're still very much locked into their app, and you can't do much outside of it, and you're limited to what they can produce for you, which usually is not much. Tesla is just a better version of that. So I consider them like a BlackBerry. You can do a ton with the Tesla app. You can summon the vehicle. It's pretty exciting. You can book maintenance in there. A lot of them you can book maintenance through the app, but that's a better version of that kind of flip phone experience. And if you recall, probably if back in the BlackBerry era, pre-iPhone, that's about as smart as you thought a phone could probably be, until the iPhone came out and the App Store, like, oh, now I think this is an entirely new category. So we're trying to get to the point where any vehicle can be made smart. Right now, we allow cars from 2008 and up to connect. And when they connect, you as the driver, you as the owner, you can control who has access to the data, and you can share it with any application you want. So DeFi auto loans, peer-to-peer car sharing. I could text you a link to drive my car for the weekend. I'm alerted whenever you leave, bounds or drive past curfew or whatever. I could, that whole self-park example I just gave in the garage, want to be able to kind of facilitate all those things, lead to an explosion of use cases, kind of get to that, like, oh, there's an app for that. Everything's digital. You can buy and sell used cars online in a few clicks, register your car on chain, not have to go to the DMV personally. So that's kind of what we're building. The DIMO protocol enables all of that. And then Digital Infrastructure Inc., the company I work at, is building apps and services on top of it.
Okay, amazing. So maybe just going through some of those analogies, totally aligned with kind of the early cars, they don't have over-the-air software updates. Generally, they didn't even have like custom networking or like operating systems. Even the more advanced one today use like Apple and Android Autoplay, and then Tesla has its own custom in-house. How do you kind of view either Apple and Android? Like, what specifically are they just not sharing that data? What makes those cars not as smart as a DIMO connected device? And similarly for Tesla, what makes that kind of the BlackBerry versus like DIMO as the iPhone analogy?
Well, they're more infotainment, but they do gather information on the vehicle. There's two. So one, GM recently made the decision to rip CarPlay out of all of its cars. A lot of automakers allow Apple CarPlay in begrudgingly because it's so popular with users, but they would prefer to have their own system, sort of like what Tesla and now GM has, where they just control everything in the infotainment center. It's a very fragmented industry, automotive. They don't want to trust these large corporate networks. And honestly, I think that's warranted. They've kind of proven time and time again that if you trust them too much, become too dependent on them, they'll screw you over. Like Facebook with Zynga and their games, Reddit and Twitter with their API access to their clients, Apple adding the 30% app tax and punishing Spotify and Epic Games and all that. Amazon with their Amazon Basics competing with other things in the store. So it's Toyota, Geico, AAA. They all have reason to be skeptical of like Apple and Android getting too much power and being too core to it. We're not just like talking about the best way to stream music inside your vehicle and unlock the doors. We're trying to establish DIMO as a protocol for universal, portable data and identity and communications and payments for every car in the world across every system. And for it to be that pervasive, for it to be that trusted, it needs to be neutral in a way that a corporate network can't be. So.
And is that in kind of the credible neutrality? Is that by essentially creating this third-party device that DIMO has created, allowing manufacturers or consumers themselves to opt in to this more credible neutrality that allows you to gather data, kind of create this more peer-to-peer network?
Yeah, and I should give an explanation as to how DIMO actually works. So when you connect your vehicle with DIMO, you are minting an NFT that goes on chain, and that NFT is more than just like a monkey profile picture you use for Twitter, which those are great. I no hate on those, but we have on that NFT you can set permissions for who can access your data. So you can, as the owner of it, I'm the only one who can share my location, my telemetry data, my identity data with a third party, which could be another person or it could be another app. That all lives on chain. The connection between this device, this has a blockchain wallet on it, as a secure element, and it's also represented as an NFT. And as a when I buy this and I plug it into my vehicle, I'm sending a command for it to sign a message, for me to claim it, and for it to bind itself to the vehicle that I just created. So there's a three-way connection between me, the vehicle, and that device. And if that protocol is followed, there's nothing that can be entirely on chain. If digital infrastructure Inc. were to disappear, that connection still exists forever, as long as the blockchain is still running. And that NFT also, the NFT of the vehicle, points to where the data is stored for that car. And right now we're the only one storing data, but in the future it could be Toyota storing data for its users. It could be some third-party company. It could be Coinbase, Google, whoever could be running a node that stores vehicle data. So you can think of it as like the directory and the permissions exist on chain, and then a decentralized network of node operators, and then apps on top of that are making use of that kind of core protocol.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I think that data of vehicles has been historically undertapped. I think Tesla has really been the first to start to experiment with that. And I believe they're also the first to do over-the-air software updates, being able to kind of reconfigure the computer, gather data, telemetry data, and then monetize that data. Because I think, to your point earlier, a lot of these first generation cars, I mean, even today, cars are now just really becoming computers on wheels, and that will only continue as more and more, I would say, autonomous driving starts to be incorporated into our life, and vehicles are potentially viewed more as kind of a place just to get from point A to point B as these autonomous systems hopefully come online. TBD on that exact timeline, but
might take a little longer than we expect.
It may, but I think that trajectory is one that we're definitely heading towards. And so,
for sure,
by being able to enable smarter vehicles, collect that data, being able to build a developer ecosystem around it, you can very much see a world where this data, even today, is very much undertapped into, and being able to provide better insurance quotes based off better driving, car utility sharing, as you were mentioned. There's many things that can potentially get unlocked when tapping into something that has not been explored yet.
Yeah. And so we originally kind of started pitching DIMO as a way to monetize data. And there's been some cool reports that between all the traffic data, road quality data, car driving behavior data, all that kind of stuff, that you could generate about $600 a year in value from a more advanced car by the year 2030. I think McKinsey put out that report for whatever that's worth. And we used to talk about it more in terms of we're going to help monetize your data. But that, I think, sells the vision and promise a little short. You don't get an iPhone because you can make money from your geolocation data, although I do that now with Helium Mobile. But you get it because it lets you access a bunch of applications. I gave a demo at ETH Denver recently where it was like the whole premise was buying a car in the year 2030. And it's like this, the demo takes you through the journey of me logging into a sort of back-endless NFT aggregator dApp. So it's all the cars listed in there are just cars that were marked on chain for sale. And it's an aggregation NFT marketplace, kind of like Blur. I connect my wallet. I share some credentials about myself related to my citizenship status, my credit score, the cars that I have. I share it with that DApp. Then I go through the process of buying a vehicle. And because I share my data, it knows what cars I have already. It knows what I still owe on those vehicles because my loans are on chain. I go to trade in one of those cars. The money goes into the money for that and the title for my vehicle go into escrow. And when that happens, my loan is automatically paid off and the remaining cash goes towards my new car. I get a DeFi auto loan for the new vehicle. And then I register the car on chain. So it's not just that, oh, we could sell your data to somebody who wants to buy it and make you $100. It's we can just make every vehicle commerce transaction that much faster. You drive into a service shop, they scan a NFC on your windshield, and everything loads up into their system because their system's built on top of DIMO as well. And they can see your whole maintenance history and add notes to it and all kinds of things. And everybody can just kind of move their data around from place to place, owner to owner, owner to auction to dealer to owner again, and kind of complete these loops. So that's really more the promise of what we're building. And people spend $12,000 a year on their car between gas, insurance, maintenance, all that kind of stuff. And if we can make these transactions more efficient for people, more empowering, it's also very frustrating. Some of the worst transactions you'll ever engage in are in cars, getting ripped off by mechanics who tell you need something you don't, going to negotiate with a used car dealer who's just trying to nickel and dime you and lie to you about the car. You don't even know what you're getting. Like all of these are solvable problems. We can make car ownership a lot better, a lot cheaper, a lot more exciting. And as this technology is getting implemented around self-driving and electrification, better that's built on top of a more powerful technology platform than just built on the same kind of outdated Web 2. A lot of automotive is not even Web 2. It's like Web 1 almost. It's like pre-web. It's a lot of fax machines and DMVs and whatever. So it's important that we build this great new era of technology on top of really good rails.
So I think the DIMO team and the product is a little bit unique because it's not just crypto focused. Crypto is really the coordination mechanism for the product, which is, I would say, the hardware device itself. Can you share just more about the hardware device, why that's a requirement and what that actually does for the vehicle?
It's actually not a requirement. If you have a Tesla, you actually should not get the device because they make the port really inaccessible and the Tesla APIs are very good. And if you have a newer car, if you have the Ford Pass app, if you have the My BMW app or whatever, if your car came with an app, you can likely log in. You go to download DIMO Mobile and just log in with your same email and password that you use for those services to connect your car. So you can connect without the hardware. You earn less because there are some security compromises and there's actually less data that we get. Tesla, we get a lot more and you can still earn quite a bit, but the other ones, we can only refresh data every several hours and you could combine both. So people will often log in with their software and connect the device, earn a bit more, get a bit more functionality. But it's not a requirement. You can get started pretty quickly. A lot of cars have that already today. And while we've been sold out of hardware, that's been the main way we've been adding vehicles. But the hardware plugs into any vehicle. The OBD port is mandated. Automakers have tried to remove it and gotten in trouble for it. And it's protected kind of under right to repair. And what it does is it pulls down information. It listens to the CAN bus on the vehicle. So all the different systems kind of communicate through this CAN bus. And it can pull information out and send it over the air back to our servers. And it makes any car from 2008 and up in a supported region compatible with DIMO, which is great for making cars that are kind of adapting those landline cars to the modern era and giving people an app for the first time for their vehicle. And yeah, as I talked about earlier too, it has some additional security guarantees, has a secure element on there. It's minted on chain. It's currently 25 DIMO to mint a hardware device. And we'll eventually probably change that to use DIMO credits or something that's more stable and doesn't fluctuate as much. But there's a cost to produce it, to mint it on the network and connect it to a car that is paid by the manufacturer, not by the user. And we can just provide more security guarantees, trust guarantees with the physical hardware.
And
sorry.
No worries. I had the eat Denver cough
The
cold
flu.
for a while. I feel like every time I go to a conference, I'm wrecked.
I had the flu
But
twice this year, so I got to skip it at Eat Denver. It had already been in,
oh no.
yeah.
But with the hardware device, or even just the APIs, that's interesting to the fact that that data that is being provided. I think you kind of outlined a variety of different opportunities, but where do you see this going? Like DIMO opening up that data that they're being able to collect to third parties, to developers. Do you feel like people are going to build better applications around giving you better insurance quotes based off your driving history? Will people build more interesting car sharing applications because you can have different read and write permissions to the vehicles at certain times? Where do you see the integration of DIMO going, combined with the product aspects that the data is providing from the car?
Yeah, because of the actual neutrality only made possible by blockchain, I fully expect the DIMO protocol to be the underlying identity mechanism for every vehicle and every vehicle system. So if you're running an auction software, if you're a dealer, if you are a mechanic, the software that you'd be using would be using, right now they all use VIN, and then maybe they plug in a Carfax API to get some other information, and that's it. And every one of these systems are kind of populating all their information from scratch. They also maybe decode the VIN to know the make, model, year of the car, but they have to kind of go and get all that information. We're providing a better digital version of this with more portable data. It's only logical to build on that better system. We're not replacing a functional Web2 system with better trust guarantees. We're introducing a new system that fundamentally doesn't really exist. And so I think expect there to be huge demand for such a platform. And then in terms of what it enables, it's like, probably would not have guessed in 2007 that an iPhone would result in the taxi industry being completely overturned and turned into Uber, because it's just kind of hard to imagine all the kind of early apps were a little bit more obvious. It's like you can read books on a piece of paper. Now you can read books on your phone. It's an iPod with a touchscreen. So I expect us to see some pretty basic stuff in terms of just rebuilding dealer software, auction software, fleet software, and things like that, using better underlying tech, more scalable tech, but for entirely new use cases that are kind of hard to even imagine, especially with self-driving vehicles and electrification being built on top of it, that couldn't exist without it.
Yeah. No, I am fascinated to see when you kind of open up this new data or access combined with even kind of more legacy vehicles that previously never had these capabilities, what features and what data people use to build the more interesting applications, because I think there are a different plethora of ideas. It's just kind of wandering through that idea maze, so to speak, and trying out to see what works. To me, the more obvious one on the surface is the insurance side, collecting driving data, being able to provide better real-time insurance quotes.
Yeah, a lot of people don't want their cars snitching on them, although that's happening anyway. I think there was a New York Times post very recently about how somebody had their insurance rates go up because their car told on them, basically. Like this whole thing with LexisNexis and insurance for vehicles, a lot of heartbreaking events and such. And the thing that I think people often start a little bit skeptical or weary about the idea of DIMO and their data being used more and more, but we're actually the solution to that problem, because we give users full control of who their data is shared with, and they can just not share it with their insurance company, or they can share only what they want to. And I imagine someone might build the safe driver insurance quote where you can get really good insurance if you share all of your information, hard braking, speeding, whatever. But there's a company called Metromile, I believe, actually I should check on how they operate, but You could also do pay per mile insurance. It's kind of crazy. I drive very little in New York City. And if I were to quadruple how much I drive, my risk of getting in an accident probably goes up by 4x, but my insurance premium stays the same. Insurance companies, they oftentimes will just ask you, how many miles do you think you'll drive this year? How many did you drive last year? And you just kind of tell them a number over the phone and they're like, all right, cool. It's so antiquated. It could be so much smarter. Someone could even you could save a lot of money by offering some type of base fee plus pay per mile that you drive. That's way less than you would pay otherwise for certain people. So we'll enable any kind of use case like that. And yeah, you could even imagine kind of on-chain car insurance applications. Now, how the claims get paid out and who reviews them, I don't know if the DAO is quite ready for that. I've seen some people start to play around with that model. But DeFi auto loans definitely makes a lot of sense. You got to figure out how to repossess the cars. And DeFi insurance could be another huge one as well.
Yeah, lots of interesting rabbit holes to go down. In terms of things, I feel like decentralized physical infrastructure networks more broadly have kind of been heating up since the last year or so. I feel like DIMO, in large respects, was very early to this trend. How do you feel like, or what do you feel like specifically people misunderstand about DIMO, even if they're familiar with kind of this decentralized physical infrastructure category as a whole?
I think we've covered a lot of them. There's a lot of surface level confusion. People think that we're for electric vehicles only, because at one point that is how we talked about ourselves and we get the early plan. A lot of people think you need the hardware to connect or just the software, but you can do both. And actually, if you can do both, you should do both. So you get more functionality and better rewards. And a lot of people think that it's about just monetizing data and not about the use cases it powers. And even just, data is kind of the read side, but there's also the write side too. And sending commands back to the vehicle, cars talking to each other, cars talking to sensors, cars paying for things. And all of that's kind of in scope further down the road as well. So there's a huge opportunity there. And also it could always expand outside of just mobility, just cars. So there's a huge opportunity long-term for DIMO, but we're going to stay focused for now. At least at Digital Infrastructure Inc. we are. And I guess the other thing would be that we truly are trying to build a protocol. I think a lot of DePIN projects, I like most of them. I think there is a distinction, though, between projects where there's a company operating a more centralized corporate network that happens to pay out rewards and tokens versus a project that is trying to build itself as a protocol, where a lot of people talk about the Bahamas test or some other name for it, where it's like, if the team were to disappear, would the project continue to run? Would it continue to exist? For Ethereum, Solana, Bitcoin, obviously, yes. There's no one. It's a decentralized group participating. There's no one person that can go shut it down, despite the rumored off switch and whatever. That's fake news. But for some DePIN projects and for earlier stage projects, it's not the case. And there is this idea of progressive decentralization and getting there, but it should be a North Star for folks. It is a North Star for DIMO, and we get closer to that every day. And I want to make sure other DePIN projects are pushing that way as well.
Maybe transitioning slightly, thank you. I think I always like to ask founders what is kind of misunderstood, because especially in bull markets, there's a lot of things that are easier to kind of gloss over just because most people don't dive into the details. And what I've always appreciated about the long form podcast is you really get to understand the nuance, how the team is thinking about it, the product vision. I think, though, the conversation more recently has kind of shifted from, or been going back and forth to different like scaling solutions. Some have been layer twos, kind of predominantly the Ethereum centered roadmap, and then other of them have kind of shifted to Solana and other high throughput blockchains. I think we've seen other decentralized physical infrastructure networks try their own blockchain initially, or try layer twos, and then eventually come over to a Solana or high throughput type architecture. And I know today you guys are really focused on Polygon and the product, but and the product that is built on Polygon. Has any of the recent market movements, the uptick in user activity in these other networks, have you guys changed your mind, or how are you guys kind of thinking about just the infrastructure side that you're built on?
Well, one thing I can say definitively, to the extent that I shaped this and our team shaped this, Polygon proof of stake chain was never meant to be the long-term home. And I would still even be surprised if anything that is currently out there ends up being the dominant platform in 10 years. Even if it is Ethereum or Solana, it'll be some level of abstraction or something that is a little bit different than what we're seeing today. And so the reason we went with Polygon early on, and I should say too, we minted the token on Ethereum L1 and bridged it to Polygon. And that was kind of like a nod to the idea that this is the place where we bridge to, where we're playing around for now, but it's not the canonical base layer of this. I think Polygon's done some really amazing things on the business development front. They've done some amazing things on the technology side. Their acquisition of the ZK of Polygon of Mir and just their work on ZK has been incredible. They've helped to move the space forward quite a bit. Those were some of the things that influenced it. The other reason that we kind of went with Polygon, in addition to like the low fees and all of that, is whenever you would go to some wallet application or some voting application or anything you might want to use, Alchemy, Block Explorers, whatever, top right says Ethereum mainnet, and then you click on that, and the next option at the time was always Polygon. And they starting to be some Arbitrum optimism, Gnosis chain or something, but it was always those two. And we knew that we didn't have to recreate our own stuff. You want splitter contracts, you want voting tools, you want whatever. Like, there's great solutions out there. They're audited, they work well, and they're compatible with Polygon. We don't do any custom work to get our chain ID supported, all that kind of stuff. So that was really the main reason at the time. We want to be very deliberate about moving, at least that's my vote. We'll do it eventually, but we want to move every year. It can't be like every year it's like, oh, now we're going to base because that's the hot one. Oh, now it's this other one, so we're going to move again. Now, let's go to Solana. Let's come back to EVM. It's like we're not going to, if we spend all of our time trying to move around chains, we're not going to develop the things that matter to differentiate DIMO. So we'll probably be late to the party. Once it's sort of obvious where we should be, then we'll show up. Once the party's going to be fashionably late. I would is at least my vote. The things that I kind of consider, I do think performance, UX, security, throughput, those things matter a ton. I think Solana is doing super interesting. I love the kind of multi-threaded approach where you identify which contracts you're going to touch and it makes sure they don't conflict with each other. Very smart system. I'm a fan of Solana. I should disclose I own Solana, I own ETH, I own Bitcoin. So I'm a fan of it, but that's not the only consideration. I also, as kind of mentioned earlier, it's like infrastructure and the Alchemies, hard hats, Polygon scans, Ether scans. But again, Solana's really advanced those pretty quickly. Other complementary apps, it's like one layer up from infrastructure, like the snapshots and tallies and Gnosis safes and other kinds of things that we would be using to make things easier for folks. And then, narrative matters too. And if it's not always the best technology that wins out, and sometimes it's just what people like the most. And again, that's been only improving there as well. So definitely watching it. No firm opinion right now, but it'll be good to see. I think too, the other big thing with Solana, having been in the space for so long, I've seen so many Ethereum killers kind of come out and, this one's going to, EOS, like, Tron, it's going to, Tezos, it's over. Tezos is like Ethereum, but it's got better governance. It's going to kill it. And it lasts one cycle, then it falls on its face and disappears into irrelevance. And I kind of assumed, I couldn't help but assume Solana would probably follow the same path, but it's, especially with FTX, imploding as well. But I think Solana is undeniable at this point in terms of what it's able to achieve from a place of substance. I also think Cosmos, and I've seen more people building on Polkadot again recently, but I don't pay enough attention to that one to have an opinion. But Cosmos is cool, Solana's cool, Ethereum's cool. We'll see.
Yeah, I've always just been of the point of the view that these things are here to serve the users instead of the users serve the network. And at the end of the day, products should be built by engineers that don't have to focus on infrastructure. And I think what I appreciate now is that there are a variety of different options to do so. I think what I'm looking forward to in the future is that, to be frank, less kind of cognitive overhead, so to speak, is out there, and it's more definitive on like, all right, for example, Solana has 10 million daily active addresses that are verifiable humans that are doing things on chain, and that's the user chain. And if you want to do something else on Polkadot or Cosmos, Avalanche, they have their own niche, but it's very distinct on why someone is using that specific technology stack or product stack to achieve their product goals. And I think the sad thing to me about all this thus far is it's not very intuitive. It's very opaque, and you have to spend a lot of time doing so. But the fact that there are options out there, at least people can play around with the different options to see what works for them. But I think the approach is cracked in seeing where the chips may fall, because to your point, it makes zero sense to jump from chain to chain over time. Optimism base, Arbitrum, it's
very non-trivial to move, even to move around among EVM chains. Very non-trivial. If you've deployed a smart contract wallet on Polygon to manage your DIMO, you put it into smart contract, DeFi pools. You can't just hard fork that over to a new chain. If you're managing your vehicle ID NFT using a multi-sig or something, those wallets don't exist they have to be minted or they have to be submitted on chain to create them on a different chain. So it's a very non-trivial migration, even among EVM. So again, we want to focus on what matters for us now. And yeah, we are on EVM right now, which would make moving to Solana a little bit harder. The EVM side, the L2, I agree, the L2 ecosystem right now is a mess, and it's going to have to get better. And I think I'm really excited about kind of where we're going with the universal shared sequencing, universal composability that we've been talking about more recently. Polygon with their AG layer and across their CDKs. Justin Drake going on Bankless to talk about
with Brendan, the CTO of Polygon, a technical deep dive, and I think people will like that. That should come out shortly.
I'll definitely listen to that one. Yeah. So yeah, and then Ethereum kind of talking about doing this more natively. It's going to have to get better because where it is today, it's very impressive what these L2s have gotten to do. But to your point about user experience, do I need base ETH or Optimism ETH or I have mainnet ETH? In our case, Matic. It's like it's way too much, and that it'll have to be cleaned up
for sure. Well, maybe as we're approaching the end of the podcast, what things are you either looking forward to on the DIMO side or for the rest of 2024?
On our side, we've been developing DIMO mobile app. If you're using DIMO, you're mostly just using our app. And we've recently gotten the APIs, the SDK to a good enough place that we can really start to see other people build awesome applications. And that one just adds more value, but it also helps people unlock and realize kind of where this is headed and how big it can be. And so I'm very excited when we start to have other household names, other new tech startups, whatever it is, building new and novel use cases that do something totally different than what DIMO Mobile does, that are totally different than what your car's existing app does, that adds real value to your life and isn't just, hey, this is blockchain, it's cool, use it. It's like, hey, this is just useful. Happens to use blockchain, who cares? We're talking to a lot of developers where that's going to be kind of completely hidden from users, they won't even necessarily know about the blockchain. We'll just send the rewards to their wallet, and eventually someday maybe the app will let them know about them, or we can communicate that some other way. But the token not being at the forefront, it really just being about the utility that it can provide. That's what gets me really excited, because I think we've seen so many blockchain use cases. I know you used to be a Tesla. I always kind of use Tesla as an example. It's like electric cars were cool as a proof of concept, and you might get one and it might cost a lot of money and have no range and be really janky, but you're doing it because you just love electric vehicles. And then you get to a point where it starts to flip, where the cars are better than gas cars in some way. And it's kind of at that point now where if you buy a Tesla, you're buying it because it's electric and because it's a good car, not just one or the other. In the future, you won't care that it's electric. It'll just be because it's a good car. And I'll have to get to that because everything will be electric. But you kind of go through this transition. And so far with blockchain, most things have been, well, you should use this because it's blockchain and you love blockchain. But we'd love to get to the point where it's like, I don't care that it's blockchain. It's just useful. And we're starting to push that spectrum forward. And DIMO, I think, can be one of the ones to kind of help pushing that. And that's what I'm most excited about for the project and for the space as a whole.
I love that. Maybe we can end it on that note. Building products, not as focused on the infrastructure side and providing real world value. I think that is where we really need to focus on, and very much appreciative of DIMO for taking that approach, because I truly believe that's what the space needs to get us to mass adoption: less infrastructure, more useful products. And so thank you so much, Rob, the co-founder of DIMO, coming on the podcast and sharing all your insights. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having me.